Welcome to another lore summary video. I'm Fragile Boson, and I'll be your logistics support officer. As a spoiler warning, you should have completed the game through the end of Chapter 2, where Sam finds himself on the eastern shore of the Central region. This video serves as an addendum to the Prologue to Chapter 2 summary videos and covers a few things I seem to have missed but are very important for understanding the lore of the game up to this point. Let's go ahead and get started. The first thing I want to talk about is Amelie. It's been 10 years since Sam has seen Amelie, and in the 10 years it's been, she hasn't aged at all because her body is said to be on the beach where time doesn't pass. Emily wears a necklace called a kipo that very young Sam gave her, and when Sam owned the necklace, he added knots to the necklace whenever he made a new friend. Amelie says that she'll add a new knot every time they see one another. It's important to note at this point that Sam sees Amelie in all of these visions on her beach. Die Hard Man refers to Amelie as Samantha America Strand when introducing her as the new president. Amelie gives Sam a dream catcher necklace when he's a young boy, a necklace that Sam wears throughout the game and eventually attaches to his backpack. Amelie went west to attempt to reconnect the United States 3 years before the start of the game in an expedition called Bridges 1. As Amelie led Bridges 1 west, the team was able to avoid every single BT, an astounding feat when you think about it, not something that someone with dooms and a bridge baby could even attempt successfully. At the very end of Chapter 1, Higgs mentions that Amelie does not have dooms, says that dooms ain't her thing. She's on destruction of a more worldwide scale and calls her an extinction entity, and this may indicate what kind of abilities or powers led to Amelie being able to help the team completely avoid BTs in the first place. Die Hard Man says that they saw BTs coming a mile away. This is an ability that seems to be unique to the Bridges 1 expedition and is probably tied to Amelie's involvement. The Bridges 1 expedition made it all the way to Edge Knot City at the coast of the Pacific Ocean. After the team arrived, it was wiped out by Homo demons, and Amelie was captured. All this information comes from the mission briefing scene at the beginning of Episode 1. We also learned from this briefing that Amelie is allowed to use the facilities of the terrorist group and to speak with Sam whenever she desires, but she can't leave the city. For those paying attention, it begs the question, how is her body on the beach, and yet she is still in the facility using all of the terrorist facilities and talking to people? Amelie refers to Bridget as her mother, and in Amelie's video, I said it would be safe to assume that she's the president's daughter, but now we know for sure. It's not completely apparent why Die Hard Man referred to her as Samantha America Strand, yet her name is Amelie. Samantha seems to be a feminized version of Sam's name. It's possible that this is Amelie's real name, but we still don't know where the name Amelie comes from if that's the case. Sam's mission is not to just complete the chiral network as he travels west, but also to bring Amelie back home to Capital Knot City. And after Amelie returns back home, it's her intention to take over the presidency and carry on her mother's work to save the country. Which also begs the question, what more needs to be done to save the country after reconnecting everyone? There's a lot of double speak in the first chapter, and this is a good example where reconnecting is saving the country, yet at the same time, after Sam's mission is complete, Amelie intends to continue the work of her mother saving the country as its new president. One more interesting detail about Amelie occurs in the beach scene that takes place between Sam and Amelie after the mission briefing. At the end of the scene on the beach, Amelie is once again walking out into the water, but the sky is suddenly burning behind her. It seems as though there's a large planet or star on fire in the sky behind her, and the entire sky is lit orange. Moving on to the organization Bridges. As noted earlier, Bridges was created to reconnect the United Cities of America after the Death Stranding. The first team sent out by Bridges was called Bridges 1. Sam's journey west is being called Bridges 2. There are many people unwilling to join the United Cities of America, but are willing to accept interacting with Bridges, even though the two organizations seem kind of inextricably linked. The cufflinks that Bridges gives Sam are noted by Amelie to be a symbol of the bonds that Bridges' team members share, even though Sam sees them as shackles. Refer to the section on Sam in this video for a little analysis referring to the cufflinks. As Bridges 1 traveled west, they left behind chiral terminals at each facility, but they needed Sam to bring a Cupid device to each of the terminals to connect them to the chiral network and form new chiral knots. The Cupid device contains all the necessary security and operations protocols to integrate a terminal into the chiral web. Sam warns Die Hardman at the beginning of episode 1 that connecting the world in the first place didn't bring an end to war and suffering, and he feels quite strongly that everything will come apart if they try to do it again. Moving on to BTs, beached things. BTs seem to be split into some kind of classification system with levels, which is what Fragile references at the end of Chapter 2. But to be clear, in my videos going forward, I will break the general forms of BTs down into 4 classifications. 3 of them we've already seen, and 1 of them we won't see until much later in the game. The main kind of BT that we see throughout Death Stranding are gazers. Gazers are the apparition antimatter-like BTs that are tethered to the ground with an umbilical cord. These BTs become visible to Sam if he stops moving completely. Gazers are like lookouts, and there are multiple forms of gazer BTs that you'll see later in the game. There are giant gazers, red, fiery gazers, and even golden ones. If you play the game on the hardest difficulty, you may have already seen some of these gazers in the first couple chapters. If you get captured by a gold gazer, it's game over and Sam is unable to repatriate. If you agitate one of the gazers, or if they find you, a second form of the gazer BT appears called a hunter. Hunters are what make the tarry hand impressions on the ground as they search for Sam or whoever it is that disturbs the gazer. I'll be honest when I say that I don't know for sure what the BTs are that spring out of the ground to capture Sam when discovered by a hunter. These BTs could be the hunter BTs themselves or something completely different. And then as already noted in the video on BTs, there are large catcher BTs. So the 3 categories of BTs that we have seen so far are gazers, hunters, and catchers. There are a 4th classification of BT called jellyfish BTs, but we won't see those until much later in the game. Moving along, I'd like to make a couple of additional notes on Higgs. In the mission briefing, Higgs is shown as the leader of the terrorist group called Homo Demens. And even though they're called a terrorist group, there are many of these terrorist groups all throughout the United States that are linked together only through their common ideology. They aren't actually one giant organization, but it seems as though at least Bridges considers Higgs to be the de facto leader of all of these groups. Higgs and his terrorist group are holding Amelie captive as a hostage on the West Coast to prevent the UCA from interfering with their activities, and as noted in Higgs's video, the groups engineer void-outs as a means of terrorist control over the United Cities of America. Our final topic for this episode will be Sam, and there are some additional notes on Sam that are pretty important. Sam walked away from Bridges and the UCA about 10 years ago, but we don't know for sure exactly why. In the mission briefing in Chapter 1, Sam states that he was no longer a member of Bridges and seems to indicate that that was the doing of Bridges itself and not necessarily Sam's desire. But after that, Sam states that he's not getting involved with Bridges or anyone else ever again. And we can ask the question, is this what led to Sam's aversion to forming bonds? Is this what led to his asymphosophobia? When Sam walks through Amelie's chirogram, he says that it's the same as it always was, like he's not even there. Something seems to have happened between Sam and Bridges that made Sam feel as though he didn't matter or he wasn't important. Sam and Amelie exchange necklaces in the game. Sam receives a dream catcher, and he gives Amelie something called a kipu. Sam awakens at Bridges with his cufflinks attached, which strongly resemble handcuffs, and Sam sees these cufflinks as shackles, even though Bridges see them as a symbol of their unity. Something happened to Sam that caused him to eschew all kinds of ties with people, not just physical ones. From our flashbacks to Amelie's beach, we can see Sam physically interacting with Amelie as a young child, so we can assume that his phobia of physical touch has developed over time and is not something he was born with. The marks that people leave on Sam after touching him seem to be a physical symptom from the phobia that is developed probably alongside his phobia, once again, not something that he was born with. Throughout the first several chapters, we see that Sam is deeply averse to forming any kind of bond or connection with other people, emotional as well as physical. Well-meaning friendly gestures are often and almost always rebuffed by Sam. It's safe to say at this point that Sam's phobia of being touched is significant of a deeper aversion to forming bonds with people, and that's why Sam sees the well-meaning symbols of contact and connection in an antagonistic way throughout the beginning of the game, including the Bridges cufflinks. Even though he's deeply averse to forming connections, Sam seems to accept this reality as necessary to complete his mission, which he does eventually begrudgingly accept. All of Sam's character development to this point makes it even more unbelievable that he would form bonds with BB-28, although it may be because he sympathizes with the BB unit. Most people see BB units as only equipment, and whatever happened to Sam and Bridges 10 years ago made Sam feel as though he was unimportant and didn't matter. Perhaps he felt as though he, too, was only equipment. BB-28 also begins to form a connection to Sam, which is recognized by Deadman before Sam begins his journey west. It'll be very interesting to see how this relationship develops over the course of the game. One final thing that you can note about Sam and BB-28 is that BB-28 is the only character in the game that Sam accepts physical contact from willingly, and it may be just because BB's attached to his uniform and doesn't touch Sam directly, but Sam is seen physically interacting with BB in ways that he doesn't interact physically with anyone else throughout the game. That's all for this lore summary video. I have been your logistics support officer, Fragile Boson. Please stay tuned for more. And remember, keep on keeping on, and tomorrow is in your hands.